We have reached season 3 of, wait for it, What is up, Netflix fans? I am so lame, I apologize. Welcome back to my channel. We're talking season 3 of You, a show that I've thoroughly enjoyed. It has its fans. It's unlike anything else on Netflix, but we're going to talk about how season 3 compares to season 1 or 2. No spoilers in this review. If you guys would like a spoiler video, let me know. Drop your thumbs up down below. There's a lot to talk about here. Let's get into it. In season 3, Joe and Love, now married and raising their baby, have moved to Northern California, where they're surrounded by privileged tech entrepreneurs, judgmental mommy bloggers, and Insta-famous biohackers. Joe is committed to his new role as a husband and dad, but fears Love's lethal impulsiveness. And then there's his heart. Could the woman he's been searching for all of this time live right next door? Breaking out of a cage in a basement is one thing, but the prison of a picture-perfect marriage to a woman who's wise to your tricks, well, that'll prove a much more complicated escape. Yeah. You all thought seasons 1 and 2 were crazy. Not only the story itself, but the actions of the characters. And we've been with Joe all of this time to know that sometimes his motivations are outlandish. Sometimes his motivations, even though they do their very best to get you to understand this character, and a lot of people rooting for his character, it's still a very difficult line to walk for me. At times, I'm like, oh, you know, Joe, he's this charming, but then you start to really peel back the layers and think about it, and no, his actions are, for the most part, completely unwarranted and wrong, but because Penn is so good in the role, you are just kind of enraptured and encapsulated by this character in general, so you just can't help but to keep watching. And then we introduced the character of Love in season 2, and for the most part thought she was a normal character until we realized her obsession and that moment between them at the end of season 2 where she shouts out, "I'm pregnant," it really changed everything, right? And now their lives are as normal on their surface as you could think a character like Joe could be a part of. But then something happens at the end of season 2, at the beginning of season 3, where Joe starts to realize that maybe this picture-perfect marriage is not all it's cracked up to be, and maybe there is more to life than being stuck by the boundaries of marriage. Is this really where I want to be with my life? And those questions are posed at the beginning of season 3. He's asking himself, is love really the one? But that doesn't really matter right now, because now Joe has a child, and everything goes away when he realizes that he must do for his child what he never had done for him growing up. Of course, we get those flashbacks. Of course, we understand where he is coming from. And while those don't clearly justify his actions, at least we get a sliver of his past. But what that does, especially in season 3, is it tells us why he wants to be a better parent. And Love, even when it comes to her decision-making, not the best decisions made in season 3. I'll say that much. She is still doing everything she can to protect her child. So as crazy and wild as both of this poor kid's parents are in season 3, especially, they're doing everything they can to try to be the best parents, whether it be going to therapy to work on themselves, trying not to make the worst decision when it comes to murdering people, even though they will do that regardless. There are a lot of people murdered in this season, and there's a lot of blood, and those moments that will make you uncomfortable, even moments that, and we'll get a warning at the beginning of an episode, that are really difficult to watch. One moment in particular, and I'm not going to give you guys the specifics of who dies or what happens, but there's a character stuck in a situation, and that character is there only because he or she is put there because of Joe and Love's actions. And their actions, the repercussions of their actions, are affecting everyone around them in this new town. You see, it's not all about going to a new place and escaping when you're just going to do the same thing as before. And the definition of insanity, I don't know if that's actually the definition, but you guys have heard that quote. It continues in this season, and those things happen because of that jealousy and that rage from the character of Love, but also the irrational decision-making from Joe. And this season, when comparing it to seasons 1 and 2, those were much more focused on one aspect of Joe's character in particular, and that's his obsession. with different women. That is him trying to find the person. And of course, we get those voiceovers and, the moments. And we've seen the memes, right? The moments where Joe is actually standing and not saying a word to someone, but you hear the narration over top. But if you actually take away that narration, it's just him going, while the character talking to him is probably like, why isn't he saying anything? But again, suspension of disbelief. And that comes into play a lot in Season 3. Okay, I will admit there are things that they do. It's like, how have they not been figured out just yet? And don't get me wrong, they're very strategic about covering up their multiple crimes in this season. Not just one thing, not just one character. Whereas seasons prior to this, it's really been this one plot point. That's the focus. That's what they're going to do. And that's what Joe has to get away with. This time, a little bit of Joe and Love working together, not on the same page all of the time, clearly, but working together to cover up certain things that are always coming back to bite them. And even when it feels like everything is solved, and there's a moment in the midst of the season where it's like, okay, well, good job. I mean, again, suspension of disbelief. I don't know if you could actually get away with that in real life, but good job. You've covered it up. And then something or someone or a decision comes into play to where they create a brand new set of problems. One thing I like about the season is that they're trying to cover up one problem by creating a new problem, even if it be accidentally, and combining those two problems to solve that dilemma. Going back to what I said earlier about Season 3 being just so drastically different, because it felt like Seasons 1 and 2, even though Season 2 there were more characters that came in and obviously more romances with Joe, but it felt like one kind of overarching plot. And that's still the case with Joe and Love trying to raise this child in this season, but it feels like things keep happening, characters keep coming along. This season we have new characters that are just so annoying, but strategically annoying, not to where I can really point to the writing and say, oh, you did a horrible job fleshing out that character. We have a character by the name of Theo in this season, played by Dylan Arnold, who does such a wonderful job. That relationship between he and Love, you're trying to figure out why she's saying the things that she says to him. He's a college student. He's just really trying to get through this crisis that he's in his personal life. And obviously, Love went through a crisis in the prior season, so they vibe really well together. You have a character like Gil, a character like Dottie that comes back into play, of course. Matthew is interesting because he's dealing with something in this season that you all will see exactly what that is, and his ability or inability to process that to where others are beginning to blame him for a certain crisis. That's an interesting character dilemma that I believe caused for even more craziness in this season. The character of Marianne is one that comes along and you're like, I don't really know what her role is going to be in this season. And then once you realize what it is, you're saying to yourself, and I said this multiple times in the season, oh no, not again. Oh no, not again. And I continue to say that. And You is just one of those shows you keep saying to yourself, Joe, what are you doing, man? Just stop. And maybe that's why I'm so intrigued by the show of You. It's not that I can really relate to any of these characters. I can relate to some of their struggles, but I'm saying to myself, stop, man. And they keep getting themselves in this situation. I'm like, please, just refrain. Can you just refrain? But they don't. Someone like Sherry, there are vloggers, bloggers, Instagram influencers, and I mean, I'm a YouTuber. What? I can't say anything. But it's so funny because they're in this town that's like so against what Love is doing with her bakery, so she obviously has to cater that to certain diets and certain ways of life. And at the beginning, there's so many awkward conversations like, oh, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to try your thing. And Sherry is one of those characters that not only is she just you see her on screen, and it's like, right, okay, I just can't. But she plays it in a way that's so funny, right? Her reaction when there's a death in the town, clearly she doesn't care about this person, but once it happens, she's using it to build herself up through her blog, Instagram, whatnot. And there's so many people like that in this season, and they know, Joe and Love, they know they have moved to a town where people act a certain way, and that comes into play a lot this season, not only with the status of certain individuals and Love coming from a family of money and Joe coming from a family, kind of on the opposite end of the spectrum. That's very interesting, that dynamic. But there are very relevant things that come into play. I mean, they even mention the pandemic multiple times as one of the first shows I've seen that's kind of in the aftermath, I guess, kind of where we're set of the pandemic. So that was kind of fascinating. There are some things that, we've just seen so much of in everyday life. Part of me was almost saying I wish we could have done without that, but it was an interesting inclusion, and it made for some really interesting moments. And every time I say the word interesting, just know that I mean bombastic and crazy. Because again, the decision making, and if you're in you for the murders and the gore and just the, again, completely wild decision making, irrational decision making, just know that it's there. But it's really all about Joe and Love's relationship. At one moment, they are completely on board with each other, and then at any moment, they are just on the complete opposite end. Like, I'm not talking to you. I don't want to be with you. And that makes for a different dynamic than we've seen. Before I give you guys my score, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to drop your thumbs up. Many more reviews to come. It was just one of those shows. There's something about it that keeps me engaged, intrigued, locked in. As outlandish as the story gets this time around, the third season of You may be the most self-aware and entertaining yet. Viewers will constantly be breathing a sigh of relief, followed by the inevitable irrational decision that keeps the series moving. I'm going in 80%. Again, it's that kind of show. As crazy as moments are, you just can't help but to keep watching. So let me know, how do you feel about You? What is your favorite season of the show so far? Is this even a show that you respond to? Thank you guys again for watching. Stay tuned. More reviews to come. Halloween Kills at some point. I don't know when.